We now turn our attention to golf. The Open Championship 2018. It will be held from Thursday the 19th July 2018 and it will run to Sunday the 22nd. So it's upon us. We're nearly in July now, so it's probably a good time to look. It is nice to wait a bit closer to the time so you can see the final odds before the tournament goes off. But I think this is as good a time as any to have a look at the prices and decide who has a chance. Obviously the prices are subject to change. I'll be using the prices that are current as of now, 29th June 2018, but you know, you can certainly have a look at the players mentioned and see what the prices are at the time when you have a look yourself. But this is the most northerly course that the Open is held on, Carnoustie. It held it first in 1931 and the Open has been held there 7 times. It's a very tough course, it has a very tough reputation. There's been very illustrious winners. Henry Cotton has won there, Ben Hogan, Gary Player, Tom Watson. So when you hear names of that sort of calibre, you know that the course is a test and you know the course has a great heritage. Carnoustie is held in very high regard. The winner, I think, will either be a player of that sort of ilk, it'll be like a Hall of Famer, like the players I just mentioned, or it will be someone who, just out of left field, comes to the fore. The reason this is possible is because the course is very tough. We've just had an extremely tough US Open, and I think this course is going to be, it won't be as tough as that. I think there was a lot of complaints regarding this US Open that's just happened, that Bruce Koepka won. People were saying it might not have been a fair test of golf, but it's going to be very tough at the Open. So you know, the major roster isn't going to let up on the players, and they're going to have to be on it. The thing that springs to mind when you think of Carnoustie, for me, is Paul Lawrie in 1999, winning a playoff after Jean van der Velde threw the title away. He had the chance to win, and on the 18th hole, you know, rather than playing conservatively, took out the driver and sprayed it to the right, and the rest is history. Ended up in the burn, ended up taking his socks off, ended up getting into the water, and ended up trying to play the ball out of water on TV. Great drama. Sad moment for Van der Velde, but Lawrie was able to come through, play solidly, and you know, lift the gold. So, I mean, I think the winning score that day was +6. Can you believe that? I mean, in a major tournament, +6. We've just had a massacre in the US Open, but I think this one's going to be tough as well. I would say the last time it was held in there was 2007, and Porrick Harrington won the tournament, and that was a winning score of -7. So it looks like they eased up the course a little bit. After the 1999 experience, having a winning score of +6 and a lot of complaints, they obviously eased it up a bit. It's a par 71 course, 7,402 yards. I think there is a par 3 on the course, I think it's the 16th, that is notorious. It's a very tough hole, 248 yards. And this is a hole that, depending on the wind, you can be hitting a driver off the tee to try and get there. I don't know if that would be necessary for some of the boomers these days. They're probably, the most they'll be looking to hit would be a 3-wood, if it's a Dustin Johnson or someone like that. Depending on the wind though, it can vary. It can be, you know, a 5-iron, it can be a driver. It just depends on that wind. So wind is going to play a big part in this tournament. And you know, it's links golf. It's going to be about playing the terrain. It's going to be about bump and run. It's going to be about imaginative shots. It's going to be about keeping it tight and staying out of the long grass. There's obviously some very heavy long grass on open tracks. If anyone gets involved in them, obviously their score's going to suffer. So the sort of profile I'm going to look for is someone accurate, someone with a reasonably good putting stats, someone who, when they get into trouble, if they, you know, go into a bunker or they're a bit offline, you know, they're able to scramble and, you know, post a good after being a bit of trouble. This course is going to require someone with a good temperament, because it's going to test you. You know, players are going to find themselves in predicaments and in strifes, and you know, they've got to play each hole individually. If they have one bad hole, they've got to be able to clear that out of their mind and focus on the next one, you know, as a brand new proposition. And you know, it's going to test them mentally. We've just had that at the US Open. A lot of players moaning about that. It's going to be a similar sort of thing. So we need someone of that sort of profile: solid temperament, accurate, reliable. And you know, I'm going to start off with Justin Rose as my first selection. He's 20-1. There are a few ahead of him in the betting. I think Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy, Spieth. I think even Tommy Fleetwood is ahead of Rose. But I'm going to start with Rose at 20-1, and I'll also have Fleetwood at 20-1. The reason I'm going for Rose is he's got that temperament. This course is going to test you. He did well in the US Open. He was in the mix up until the final round, fell away in the final round, but he's got that temperament where I think he could be there or thereabouts. He's got a very steady swing. He's got a very steady rhythm. He focuses on staying calm. He focuses on being emotionally detached from what's going on in his game, whether it's going badly or well. He's pretty much got a similar expression on his face, keeps things steady. And he's accurate. He's a long hitter. He's a 2013 US Open champion, so he has the pedigree to win a major. And I think he won at Merion in the US Open, which is another tough course. So if he can win on that tough track, he should have a chance here at Carnoustie. Of course, he had that famous performance at Royal Birkdale in 1998, where he was the low amateur, pitching in on the 17th, the year that Marco Mira won it. So, he's done well in the Open. There's going to be 200,000 people watching. He's played, in front of crowds like that at an Open and had success. It's a good few years ago now, 20 odd years ago, but he's had success on the course. He's had major success since then in the US Open, so I think he's a good option, 20 to 1, and I'll be looking to take that each way. I'll take Tommy Fleetwood as well, because it was an amazing performance at the US Open. Did really well, proved himself on a tough course. He's playing at, the peak of his powers now. I think he's a young man, late 20s, hits the ball a country mile, lovely rhythm, very confident. I'm just going to back him to continue his good form. I think 20 to 1. It's not that there's a huge amount of value on this 20 to 1 on Fleetwood. It's probably based on form, probably about right. But I'm just going to back him because he's playing well, and I can back him to play well in front of his home fans and continue his good form. I'm going to look towards Alex Noren as well at 45 to 1. Have been fond of him on this channel for a while now. It's just because he's been consistent for a number of years now. Tremendous ball striking, tremendous mentality, guaranteed Ryder Cup player. Always in the mix. If he's keeping it relatively straight, he's always in the mix because of that ball striking. Good temperament, Scandinavian, level temperament. So we're going to go with Alex Noren, 45 to 1. We're going to go look towards Mark Leishman because we always do. I don't even know if I need to say anything about that because I seem to pick him at every tournament. But he's finished second in the Open in 2015 at St Andrews behind Zach Johnson. So he's got pedigree in the tournament. It's one of those steady swings and steady games where the ball stays in play more often than not, hits it far enough, has the temperament, and I like him. Just keeps it steady, keeps it reliable. And on a tough course like this, you need someone like that with that sort of steadiness of mind. So we're going to go with Mark Leishman, 45 to 1. As an outside bet, we're going to look towards Shane Lowry at 100 to 1. So you're getting a nice bit of value there. He's a guy who, he's used to links courses. That's what he's been brought up around. He knows how to play the game on these sort of tracks. And, we're going to look towards him because that number is just so big. I think it's a value play. He's someone who can hit the ball low when necessary, play punch shots where necessary. I'm thinking back to when Darren Clarke won it, good few years ago now, when wind started blowing. He was one of the few players that had the ability to punch the ball under the wind. Didn't have shots ballooning up into the air which are going to get caught by the wind and blown off track. And I think of Shane Lowry in a similar sort of way. He's got those sort of shots in his armoury. I haven't heard his name around recently as performing, amazingly well at the top of leaderboards, but at this sort of price, 100 to 1, I think it's worth a shy each way. And I think he has a good chance. Probably the last selection I'm going to go for, although there's a lot of players that have chances, I'm going to look towards Brandon Grace. He's at a 50 to 1. He's been a good player for a long time. Good ball striker. He's just been a solid player for a long time. And he's always there or thereabouts. Not really, hasn't been in in the top sort of 3 in majors for a while. But I think his time is coming. I think of him in a similar sort of ilk as a Louis Oosthuizen, who had his time, multiple major champion Oosthuizen. There's a lot of good South African players around, and I think Brandon Grace is one of the better ones. So at 50 to 1, I'm going to look towards Brandon Grace. So those are my selections. But I obviously realise that, you've got McIlroy and Justin Johnson at the head of the market at 12 to 1. Obviously they have a chance. They're always at the head of the market. Dustin Johnson played exceedingly well at the US Open. He led it for a long time in the early rounds, and then, it didn't really happen. Brooks Koepka, snuck up on him. I wouldn't look past anyone looking at Koepka as well. That was an amazing victory, an amazing performance. One of the elite players in the game and on his way to the Hall of Fame, now being a back-to-back US Open champion. I did think about going for Koepka, but I just think there ain't many players who win majors back-to-back. And you've got the emotional high of winning that tournament. He's won it twice in a row. He's had a lot of celebrations. It's just difficult. You know, if you look at the stats, it's very unlikely that you're going to have someone win, particularly a US Open and then an Open. It's just, I think it'll be too much to pull off. I'm not going to say he's going to have a bad tournament. It wouldn't surprise me if he, you know, boasted a top 20 or a top 10 performance, but I'm just going to bet against him, you know, winning tournaments of that magnitude back to back. We're going to have the likes of Spieth there. I mean, I think I mentioned him in the US Open and it didn't really happen. Didn't play well. Well, obviously, major winner Spieth, and someone I'm very fond of. I think he's a great player. And when you talk about temperament, I've talked about temperament a lot. There's no one with a better temperament than Spieth, you know. He's got that mentality. He's got that calmness. But just don't think he's playing well at the moment. So, you know, you've got Spieth at sort of 12-1. I think it's a bit low, so I'm going to avoid Spieth there. Ricky Fowler is there, sort of 18-1, not a bad play. The problem with Ricky Fowler, they always price him at a price which is about right. You never really get value. If I could get a 28-1 on Fowler or a 33-1, I'd look at it. But he's always down at 18-1 and 16-1. And, you know, it's just a little bit too short. But anyhow, please give your comments. This is going to be a great tournament. Please comment on who you think has a chance and why. Please comment if you've seen any good prices out there in the market. Definitely enjoy the tournament. It's going to be fantastic. Carnoustie is a great track. The course is going to be challenging. It's going to test players. They're going to have to dig deep to stay on track and, you know, not be concerned and not be wavered by high scores. So it's going to be great. It's going to be a challenge. Please enjoy. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.